What do we call you, sir?
First name, Mr. Last name, Glass.
Glass is a superhero thriller written and directed by M. Night Shyamalan, the guy who made The Sixth Sense and, well, a few other movies.
What? No!
Glass is a sequel to Shyamalan's 2000 film Unbreakable and his 2016 film Split. The film stars Bruce Willis, Samuel L. Jackson, and James McAvoy, and it follows David Dunn and Kevin Wendell Crumb, who get trapped in the same mental institution as Elijah Price, and upon their arrival, Elijah decides to use them to show the world that superheroes exist. Now, overall, I liked this movie, but a lot of this movie actually disappointed me. Now, let's start with what I liked about the movie. First off, it was very nice to see David Dunn and Elijah Price on screen together again for the first time since Unbreakable. The performances in the film are all great. Willis gives a good performance, Jackson gives a great performance, and McAvoy once again gives a fantastic performance as this character with all these personalities. He sells every persona, and it was very entertaining to watch such a great performance. I also really liked the way that this film connected Unbreakable and Split in some very great ways. Glass includes some deleted scenes from Unbreakable, which were very interesting to see. But this movie disappointed me a little bit with its overall story. After a very interesting first act where we get to see what Dunn has been doing with his life after the end of the first film, the second act of the film finds our three central characters at a mental institution. And once that happens, the story pretty much stops. There are only a few developments in the story during the second act, but most of the middle of the film is just in one location, and the actual story ends up staying in one place. In that aspect, the film story is reminiscent of Split, because in Unbreakable we were constantly finding these new developments in the story and in Dunn's character, but here most of the story is simply the characters sitting in a room. And while it didn't bore me at all because the dialogue was interesting, it just isn't what I expected or wanted from this film. I also don't quite get why this film was called Glass, because Mr. Glass doesn't even show up until about half an hour into the movie, and he doesn't say a word for the first hour. But anyways, this film has a very polarizing ending. Some love it, some hate it. I like parts of it, and I also hated parts of it. I'm not going to spoil it, but here are a few of my thoughts. The endings of Shyamalan's earlier films, such as Split, The Sixth Sense, and Unbreakable, are some of my favorite endings ever, because they're so unexpected, but when you go back and watch it again, you see that it made sense because of the amount of hints given to the audience to clue you in on the ending. And this is where Glass failed. The final 10 minutes of the film introduced this completely new plot element that wasn't hinted at once in the first 2 hours, and it just felt very out of place and random. I liked certain parts of the ending, and I thought in some ways it ended the series pretty well, but this completely new plot element just really threw me off, especially given how important it was in the ending, but not so much during the first 2 acts. And I just thought it felt very rushed. It was just this really big, important piece of the puzzle that just didn't get a fair amount of explanation in the movie. Also, the beginning of the third act of this movie sets up this big, huge action spectacle that I got pretty excited for. But by the end, the payoff wasn't that great at all. And what we got instead paled in comparison to what this movie was building towards. Everyone was so hyped about the big fight between David Dunn and the Horde. But that scene was actually pretty bad in my opinion because Shyamalan isn't an action director. As a result, the choreography is pretty boring, and there are some shots in the fight where we see it through the POV of either Dunn or the Horde, and it looked terrible. It's just kinda sad because there are so many times in the movie where you feel like you're watching OG Shyamalan, and then there are scenes where you just feel like you're watching The Last Airbender Shyamalan or The Happening Shyamalan.
We can't just stand here as the uninvolved observers.
I need a second, okay? Just give me a second.
We're not gonna be one of those assholes on the news who watches a crime happen and not do something. We're not assholes.
Just a second.
There were children in that Elliot, please tell us what to do.
I need a second, okay? Why can't anybody give me a goddamn second?
There were just certain choices he made in this movie that I didn't like or agree with, and overall I liked it. But I just wasn't the biggest fan of the way this movie concluded. Put simply, Unbreakable was a modern day masterpiece. Split is an okay horror thriller, and Glass exists. It's a forgettable sequel that I don't think was as good as many fans were hoping for. The first act was great, the second act was average, and the final act is just something I have very mixed feelings on because I didn't quite like the ending that much. It's the kind of ending that's going to impact audiences in many different ways. The ending didn't completely disappoint me, but I just feel like it could have been constructed in a way that was much better. There's so much emotion in the ending that could have been done more effectively, but for me, it didn't quite work. To compare, I think Unbreakable was miles better than this movie, and I like this around the same amount that I liked Split. I'm gonna give Glass an 8.1 out of 10. Guys, thank you so much for watching, and if you want to see more reviews in the future, please subscribe.
What have you done, Elijah?